It is no surprise that Pokemon is the absolute biggest media franchise in the world. In fact, it is so big that I'm willing to bet that there are probably more people in this world who have seen this yellow rat than people who have not. And ever since I was a young kid, I have been a huge fan of the franchise. My first memories with Pokemon involved me playing Pokemon games on my DSi XL. Pokemon games were what I played the most on my DS, which included games such as Pokemon Heart Gold Soul Silver, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, Pokemon Black and White, and some other spin-off games. I loved these games so much that I remember that I would go play pretend Pokemon adventures with my cousins outside, throwing around toy Pokeballs with these little Pokemon figures that we purchased from the swap meet that may or may not be legit. I also remember watching the Pokemon anime a ton as a kid. Specifically, I watched Pokemon Adventures in Orange Islands and Pokemon Advanced. However, the discs that my mom had were not properly labeled, and since I was also a dumb, stupid kid at the time, I basically watched every episode out of order. So yeah, back to the games. I played these games a ton when I was a kid and remember absolutely loving them, but I was too young to actually play them properly, so instead of playing them through normally, I would actually just cheat the living hell out of them. The first Pokemon game I actually played through completely legit was actually Pokemon X on my 3DS, which I had acquired on my birthday during middle school. Now, this game was a hit or a miss with a lot of people, but at the time I actually quite enjoyed it, as Mega Evolution is undoubtedly the coolest gimmick ever added to the Pokemon franchise. But as time goes on, I kind of feel like I am distancing myself more and more from Pokemon. I don't feel anywhere near as attached to the franchise as I once did, and I don't think it is because I've gotten older, although it could very well be. I still continue to play Pokemon games with an asterisk, and I will explain more later on in the video. I've given the new anime a shot, and honestly I think it's actually pretty decent from the few episodes that I've seen. And I love watching Wolfie VGC videos, even though I've never touched competitive Pokemon in my life. Despite consuming all this Pokemon related media, I just don't feel the same way towards the franchise as I did when I was a kid. I think the best way for me to describe how I feel about the franchise today is just disappointment. Pokemon Red and Green came out in 1996, with its global counterparts Pokemon Red and Blue releasing 2 years later. Now, when these games first debuted, I was negative 6 years old, so it is safe to say that I have never played these games. So from what I gathered on this one Reddit post, Pokemon succeeded because it was an RPG that was simple yet fun, that had cute and cool monsters that gave a lot of room for self-expression. But Pokemon has been out for over 20 years now, and in this time frame, Pokemon at its core has not changed very much. The games have followed the same storyline for decades. Collect 8 gym badges, stop an evil organization on the way, challenge the Elite Four, become the champion, and last but not least, try to catch them all. Now, while the core of Pokemon games have stayed the same over time, that does not mean that the games themselves haven't changed at all. Quite the contrary, each new installment of Pokemon has only further improved upon the formula. Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire introduced double battles, adding way more depth and complexity, which is now the main format for all official competitive Pokemon tournaments. Pokemon Diamond and Pearl introduced the physical and special split, which made it so that the damage category of your move was no longer tied to its type, but rather the move itself, allowing for a wider range of options for different Pokemon. Pokemon Black and White introduced reusable TMs that allowed one TM to be taught to multiple Pokemon, which gave players more incentive to actually use their TMs and switch Pokemon around more often. Now, Pokemon has improved a ton over the years. But here's the thing, when I said that every new installment only further improved on the formula, that was a bit of a lie. What I meant to say was that every new installment of Pokemon has only further improved upon the formula up to around Gen 6 or so. Pokemon X and Y, which to some was the start of the decline of Pokemon, was Pokemon's first step into the 3D realm. Now, while the game was overall decent, the game suffers from one massive problem. It was just way too easy. The introduction of the XP share along with Mega Evolution made it so that you would bring an overleveled, Mega Evolved beast to each and every battle and just absolutely steamroll. The next installment, Pokemon Sun and Moon, and I guess Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, for the most part fixed this problem. Just one issue. The story in these games just sucked ass. Pokemon was never known for a story, and that's okay, as the story in Pokemon games always served more as a motivator for your actions rather than a narrative to invest yourself into. But Pokemon Sun and Moon has just way too much unskippable dialogue and cutscenes for a game whose story is just not that good. Pokemon Sword and Shield had this issue as well, along with many others, with one of the largest ones being Dexit, where the first time ever, not every Pokemon was going to be put into the game. This was massively disappointing for a lot of fans, as one of the most important features that Pokemon games has always had was the ability to transfer your Pokemon from previous games to newer ones. However, since this game wouldn't have all
905
Pokemon in it, you might not be able to bring in the trusted companions that you've built a connection with. Not to mention remakes, where for some reason they cut out some of people's favorite parts of the game, with ORAS cutting out the Battle Tower and BDSP being a remake of Diamond and Pearl rather than Platinum, which many consider as the straight up superior version, and also it just sucked a whole lot of ass. And ever since then, the new releases have been kind of disappointing. Even the new open world releases, Pokemon Legends Arceus and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, were kind of disappointing. Now, while I can respect the fact that they innovated, and I did enjoy them for what they were, in the grand scheme of games, these games were just lacking in so many ways. A lack of voice acting for games that seemingly have increased the amount of dialogue over the years and have placed a higher importance on narrative. Very bare bones world design for an open world game when other open world games such as Legend of Zelda do this way better. Poor graphics plus optimization, which never seemed to be much of an issue until Pokemon went to the Switch, along with other many critiques of the game. The reality is that while Pokemon games might meet the standard for what is good enough for Pokemon, they just don't for what is good enough as a game. To be honest, some random dude or small team is able to make games way better than what Game Freak is pumping out. And this is why you take a look at fan games. Fan-made content, whether it is art, music, mods, memes, or even games, is great for both the developer and the player. Fan-made content has undoubtedly helped a lot of games do well and has even kept some games alive. Now, I've only played a few Pokemon fan games, but out of the ones that I've played, they were great, and I would even go as far as to say that they are even better than some of the recent games that have come out. My personal favorite fan game is Pokemon Infinite Fusion, where the main selling point is that you can take two Pokemon and fuse them into a new one. What is neat about that is that a lot of the fusions have custom sprites that are community made, and some of these custom sprites just look sick as fuck. Now imagine that you are Nintendo. You've just released Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and a good chunk of the player base is dissatisfied with it. Then you see someone release their Pokemon fan game that they've been working on for the last few years, and everyone who plays it says it's the best thing ever. What would you do? Learn from what they are doing and then give Game Freak the necessary resources to produce a product that takes the best aspects of fan games while having the qualities of an official product? Kill all your competitors because you can't be the worst if you are the only one left standing. Pokemon Uranium, cease and desist. PokeMMO, cease and desist. Pixelmon, a fucking Minecraft mod, cease and desist. Heck, let's take a look at Palworld. It's not Pokemon, but it's clearly inspired by it. What does Nintendo do?
We're gonna sue you. See you in court.
Look, I don't even blame Nintendo for what they did with Palworld. It clearly took a little too much inspiration from Pokemon. But what makes me really disappointed is that Palworld is what Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet could have and should have been. And Nintendo, instead of making a higher quality product, just tries to sue their competitor out of existence instead. Nintendo's attitude towards Pokemon fan games and Palworld just tells me that they aren't interested in making better Pokemon games, but rather, they just want to milk the franchise as much as possible while spending as little money on it as they can. And relatively recently, Pokemon has released the trailer for Pokemon Legends Z, and honestly, I'm not too impressed by it. Yeah, I'm still probably gonna buy it.